Okay. And then y'all just ended up being my recording class, so. Okay. So let's take a look at the top. Last time you learned about even and odd degree. Even, you should remember that that means that your ends go the same way. So they're either both up or both down. An easy example of that would be like x squared, your power's even. So if your leading coefficient is positive, both ends are going to be up. Think like positive x squared versus negative x squared, which way do both your ends point? Down. Very good. Okay, for an odd degree, your ends are going to go opposite ways. A positive odd, you're going to start low and end high. Negative odd, you're going to start high and end low. So let's take a look at number 1. Okay, first question, the highest power is an x3. Is that odd or even? Okay, this is an odd degree. Okay, and then the second question is it a positive or negative odd? Remember, it's only negative if that term has a negative in front. So does it have a negative in front? No. Then this would be a positive odd. And then I'm going to go ahead and put, that means it's going to start low and end high. Okay, but remember, even though we covered that last class, that's also right here on your notes if you forget which one's which. Okay? Okay, so from there, you are going to find all of the x-intercepts. We covered this last time. So an x-intercept is going to make your equation equal to 0. Okay, there are multiple different methods that we talked about for that. Okay, GCF, perfect squares, T-chart, which is your A, B, C, and then grouping. Okay. So taking a look at number 1, looking at your terms here. If you have 4 terms, it's always grouping. So I'm going to group the first 2 and the last 2. And then we're looking for what they have in common. I'm going to rewrite this so that I can write on it. So first 2 and last 2. Okay, what can I take out of the first group? They have to both be able to divide by it. X squared is correct. So I'm going to take my x squared out. And then I'm going to see what's left over. Originally, it was an x3. So if I take a squared out, I'm only going to have 1x left. What about from the second part of that, the minus 6x squared? What would be left when I pull the x squared out? Just the minus 6. Okay, take a look at your second 2. I have a minus 9x and a 54. What can both of those divide by? Okay, 9. And then remember, if the first one's positive, you have to pull the if the first one's negative, you have to pull the negative out as well. Otherwise, your parentheses won't match. So my negative 9 is going to come to the front. That leaves my x alone for the first term. And then what's 54 divided by negative 9? Negative 6. Okay, then from there, your parentheses ought to match each other. I see here that they do. I have an x minus 6 here and an x minus 6 here. That's going to form my first factor. My second factor is going to be whatever I had pulled out. So I had an x squared and a minus 9. That's factor number 2. Okay, from here, we talked about if you get it in factored form, actually, that second one, we could break down one more time. Do we remember what method? Perfect squares. Very good. What's the square root of 9 of x squared? X. And then what's the square root of 9? And remember, technically it's plus or minus 3. So you put a plus 3 in one, minus 3 in the other. It'd be like that. And then just keep your x minus 6 here in the front. Okay. So technically, this is splitting one more time into x plus 3, x minus 3. Okay, from here, if your equation is equal to 0, you are going to let each one of those equal 0 separately one at a time. So I showed you a trick for this last notes, but we're gonna rediscover it. So if I have x minus 6 and I set that equal to 0, how do I get rid of the minus on the 6? And if I add 6 to both sides, then my answer comes out to be what? 6. How does that relate to the original parentheses? It was originally a minus, the answer came out positive. Let's see what happens if it starts out positive. X plus 3, set it equal to 0. And then how do I get rid of the plus 3? And if I minus it across, then my answer just comes out to be a negative 3. So the pattern that we talked about last class is that whatever's in your parentheses, your answer should be the reverse. If it's originally a minus, your answer should be a positive of that same number. If it's originally a positive, it'll come out minus. So now looking at my third one, if I want to shortcut it, it's a minus 3. Then the answer should come out to be positive 3. Very good. That would be the third answer. Okay. Set up your graph. Let's plot those points. Remember, these are called zeros because they're along the x-intercept. So I'm going to have positive 3, negative 3. And then the last one was 6 right here. So if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would be here. Okay, for the shape, we said it's odd. And we said it's going to start low and end high. Then you're going to start at the bottom of the graph down here. You're going to go up through the first x-intercept, down through the next one, and then back up through the third one. Okay. And then if you want to circle, we said this was odd positive. Questions on that? Look a little bit, maybe look familiar from whatever day I didn't see on Thursday. Okay, go ahead and turn the page. Look at the next one. Okay, take a look at number 2. First question I have for you on number 2 is it even or odd? Okay, x squared is going to be even. And then is it even with a positive or a negative coefficient? In front of that is a negative. So that means both ends down. Okay. Versus if it was even with a positive on the x squared, it would be both ends up. Okay, now taking a look at your equation, I'm going to rewrite it. Okay, I want to factor that. What are my options? Can I do grouping if I only have 2 terms? Grouping is where you underline the first 2 and the last 2. So I can't really do grouping. Can I do A, B, C if I only have 2 terms? No, then the only one left is either perfect squares or GCF. Okay, are these perfect squares? No, but is there GCF? What can they both divide by? 2. And if the first term is negative, you should take out the negative with it too. So I'm going to divide these by negative 2. And let's see what's left over. My negative 2x squared, if I divide the negative 2 out, leaves me with just a what? X squared. And then my plus 20, if I divide it by negative 2, turns into a what? Minus. Okay, now, technically, okay, for this one, perfect squares is when it's subtraction in the middle, and you can square root both numbers. Okay, 10 won't perfectly square root, but can I still square root it like if I have my calculator out? Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about is if you need to split that up, you can. The square root of x squared is going to be x and x. And the square root of 10, if it were a perfect number, I would find it. But if it's not, then just put plus root 10 and minus root 10. Okay, so if it's not a whole number, that's okay. Just keep this square root in there. Okay, and then my negative 2 is 0. All right, let's list our solutions. My first x is with a plus root 10. What is the solution going to be for that when I solve it? It'll end up being negative root 10, right? Because you take your plus root 10 and subtract it off both sides. Okay, what about your second one? It's originally a minus root 10. Then how do we get it across to the other side? It would end up being a positive. Are we good with that? All right, now, when I go to my graphing, you don't know what the square root of 10 is, but do you know what the square root of 9 is? 3. Then square root of 10 is going to be a little bit bigger than 3. So when I do my graph, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then just put my dot a little bit past there. Because remember, I don't know exactly what the number is, but if 9 square roots to 3, then 10 is going to square root to like 3.1 or 3.2, just a little bit bigger. Same thing on the other side, negative 1, 2, 3, and then a little bit more. We said this is an even with both ends down. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to come up through my first root and then down through my second root. And you should be able to sketch your graph like that. So that was an even negative. Questions on that? Okay. All of the roots that you looked at last class are called single roots. Okay, so this is a single root. And a single root, we're about to look at what happens when you get a double root. Okay, so this is where new stuff is starting in your notes. Okay, so take a look at number 7. First question, can you tell me if it's even or odd? Highest power is x3, which is odd. Okay, so I'm going to put this is going to be odd degree. And then is it a positive or a negative odd? Positive, which means it's going to start low and end high. So I'm going to put start low, end high. Okay. From there, we're ready to set this equal to 0 and then think about how we can factor it. You have an x3 plus 10x2 plus 25x equal to 0. What can I do first? Think about that list of factoring choices. What do we always do first if there is one? Greatest common factor. Remember, it could be a number or a letter. What is it this time? It's going to be an x. So we're going to GCF that x out to the front. So then what's going to be left over from my x to the 3 is now an x squared. My 10x squared is now just a 10x. And then my 25, which used to have an x, now it's just a regular 25. Okay, from there, we already took out the GCF. Now look at what's left over. Okay, that's going to be a T-chart or the ABC. So I have an A here, B in the middle, C on the end. So A, B, C. And for right now, this X here, we're just ignoring that. So I'm going to put my finger over it so you can't see it. Okay, even though technically it's there, we're ignoring. Okay, at the top of the chart, which two numbers do I multiply? Do you remember? A and C. So my A is a 1. My C is a 25. 1 times 25 is 25. Then I list out all my factors that will multiply to 25, starting with 1. 1 times what? 25. And 2 go into 25. 3, 4, 5. 5 and 5. Okay, and then you could keep going, but there aren't any other parts, so we'll just spare the time. Okay, at the top of the chart, if it's a plus, you want your numbers to add to what your B is in the middle. What is my B this time? 10. Then which of those are going to add to 10? 5 and 5. Very good. So from there, we're going to do 1x squared. My 10x is now a 5x and a 5x. And then we're gonna split into group B. What can I take out of the first two? Just an X. What's left over? X plus 5. Okay, take a look at your second group. I have a 5X and a 25. What can I take out of these two? Just a 5. And then when I pull that 5 out, now my 5X is just an X. What about my 25? It'll just go to a 5. Very good. Okay, then remember, my parentheses are supposed to match, do they? I have an X plus 5 and an X plus 5, so that's factor number 1. And then my second factor comes from X and plus 5 that I took out. Do you see though that that's the same factor again? Okay, so you can either write it twice, which I'm going to do, or you could do it as an X plus 5 squared. Thank you, Mark. That's right. Now, quick question. If the parentheses is an X plus 5, what will the answer come out to be? When I set it equal to 0, it'll come out to be a negative 5. Very good. So I'm going to put right here X equals negative 5. Okay. Now I'm forgetting one other thing. Remember, this was originally an X cubed, which means I should have a total of 3 X's. I have this one twice. What was the other X that I had? Do you remember at the beginning where we took out that GCF? So don't forget that one. That one should still stay in your answer. Okay, does anybody remember from last class, if your X is in the front by itself, what is the answer that goes with that? 0. Very good, that's right. And how I want you to remember it is if it's X on the outside, what does outside start with? An L. Okay, so my other answer here is going to be 0. Okay, but here's the difference. If your X is only out there once, that's a single root. You already know how to do that. But if your factor shows up twice, we're going to call that a double root. So I want you to label your 0 as a single and your 5 as a double. And now let's talk about what that does to the graph. So 0 is still here. And then negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be here. This is my single. This is my double. Okay, a single is going to pass through the x-axis. We already talked about that last class. A double is going to do like a bounce on the x-axis. So remember, we want to start where? Start low and end high. So start with your pen down low. When you get to the double, you're not going to pass through the x-axis. You're going to bounce off of the x-axis. So you're still going to touch it, but you're going to stay on the bottom of the x-axis. You're not going to pass through. Okay, then when you get to your single, that's where you can pass through. So a double is going to create a bounce in the graph. A single is going to be a pass through. Okay, and that's the difference between the two types of factoring. So all of your questions in your assignment last time were single roots, which means they pass through. Okay, but on today's assignment, if you see a bounce, that means it was a double root and it should show up twice. Okay. Then we said this one was odd and positive. Okay, got it? All right, turn to the next one, please. Okay, take a look at number 8. First question, odd or even?
Odd.
Okay, it is odd because it's an x to the 3, and odd how? Odd and negative. Now, I'm going to put underneath that, what does that mean? If it's an odd negative, where does it start? Look back at your first page if you don't remember. Where does the negative odd start? High, and it should end where? Low. So I'm going to do start high ends low. Okay. All right, once we've done that, we are looking to factor our expression. So if I have a negative x cubed and a minus 7x squared, what form of factoring can I use there? GCF is correct. What can I take out? How many x's? Anything else that I should take out? The negative. If the first one's negative, remember you have to pull that out as well. So I'm going to take out a negative x squared. What is that going to leave me with if I had a negative x cubed? Just an x. And then what about from the minus 7x squared? Plus 7. Very good. X plus 7. Okay, we're setting that equal to 0. If my parentheses says x plus 7, what's the solution going to be? Negative 7. And now question, is that a singular root or a double root? Just for that one. That's a single. And remember that a single is going to create a pass through. Okay, and then for my x squared, if x is on the outside, what does that number go with? 0. Remember, x on the outside starts with an O. Okay, and is that a single or a double? If it's got a squared on it, that makes it a double. And what did doubles create at the graph? A balance. Very good. Okay, so let's sketch our graph. Okay, place dots for me at 0 and negative 7 along the x-axis. Okay, 0 and negative 7 on the x-axis. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 0. Where is this one going to start? High and end low. So when I do my first touch at negative 7, am I going through or am I bouncing? Negative 7 is a pass through. So I'm going to start high. And then where am I supposed to end? Low. Then I just want to go back up, touch, and then keep going down. So I'm going to go back up, hit that 0 spot, and then keep going down. So that you're starting high, going through negative 7, touching at 0, and then continuing to go down to end low. Does that make sense? Okay. So you should know what a single root is. You should know what a double root is. There's only one more type that we're going to cover today. Okay, so take a look at number 9 for me. Okay, take a look at number 9. What type of factoring is it? Yes, there's backward cross right there. Okay, what can we do for factoring on number 9? Choices are GCF, perfect squares, grouping, or T-chart. Grouping is correct. Group your first 2 and your second 2. What can we take out of the first 2 there? X squared. Then my x squared comes to the outside, and what's left over? X plus 2 is correct. Okay, out of my second 2, I have a minus 9x minus 18. What can we take out of those 2? Minus 9. My minus 9 comes to the outside. What's left over? That'd be an x and a plus 2. And then my x plus 2's match. That's my first factor. And then what's my second factor?
X plus 2. X squared minus 9.
X squared minus 9. Very good. And then remember that if it's an x squared with a minus, you can split that again. Is 9, does it happen to be a perfect square? Yes. What is 9 going to split into? Okay, remember it's plus or minus 3. So x plus 2 in the front, plus 3 and minus 3. Are any of those doubles? No, right, they're all gonna be singles. So I'll have 1 at x equals -2, 1 at x equals -3, and 1 at x equals +3. Okay, but these are all singles. Okay. Which means that really this example's in the wrong spot of the notes, and you could have done this one last class. So let's just real quick sketch it and then move on. So -1, 2, 3, -2, and +1, 2, 3. Where are we gonna start for this graph? This is an x cubed as your highest power. So it's gonna be start low and end high. So, and all of them are passes, right? So that means I'm gonna pass through. So it's an odd positive, which means start low and high. Okay. All right, so let's move on to imaginaries, which is what I thought we were gonna do. Let's just skip the next example since it's similar, and we'll go to number 7. Okay, go ahead to number 7. Go ahead and take out your groups for me, please. Okay, groups for me, please. What are we taking out of the first group? X squared. And that's gonna leave me with an x plus 2. Second group, what can we take out? 9. And that's gonna leave me with another x plus 2. Now notice this is almost the exact same problem, but there's one thing that's different. My x plus 2 still match. Okay, which is great. Okay, but what's my second factor? X squared what? Plus 9. Okay, now remember what I told you. You're only allowed to do the square root shortcut if it's what sign in the middle? Has to be a minus. Let's talk about why. I can't split this one. Okay, and I'm gonna put a little note of that. You cannot use square roots if it's not a minus. Okay, so maybe put like a little note. Okay, you're not allowed to do the little square root shortcut if it's not a minus in the middle. Has to be. So let's talk about why. If my first parentheses is an x plus 2, what's the answer gonna be?
What was it? Sorry,
If my first one is an x plus 2, what's the answer gonna be? Reverse the sign, it'll be a minus 2. And then quick question, is it a single or a double? It's a single, because it doesn't have a squared on it, right? So this is a single root. Okay, now let's do this one, but we're gonna have to set it equal to 0 by hand. Because I can't split it up because it's not that type where it's a subtract in the middle. How will I get rid of the plus sign? Subtract 9. So -9 minus 9. 0 minus 9 gives me a -9. And then what's the next step? You're supposed to square root, right? To get rid of the squared. What's the problem though? Are you allowed to square root negatives? Okay, no. That means that the other roots are imaginary. Okay, so I'm going to put here can't square root a negative. So the other roots are imaginary. Now, have you guys seen in your other math classes like the I's, where it'll be like 5i? Have you ever seen those? Okay, so we'll do a unit on those later. Okay, but for today, all that you have to know is that if you're setting this equal to 0, and you minus the number across and then square root it, that means that you don't have any other real roots. It's not gonna hit the x-axis again. So let's see what that looks like in your graph. Set up your little grid here. We're gonna cross at -2. This is an odd graph. And the initial term is positive, so where's it gonna start? Start low and end where? High, because we know the ends have to go opposite, right? So start low, I want you to pass through at -2, because it was a single. And then here's what an imaginary root looks like. Your graph is gonna turn back towards the x-axis, but then not make it. That's what an imaginary root looks like. So a real root means you got an answer and it crosses the x-axis, or maybe it bounces, but it gets to the x-axis. Versus an imaginary root is where your graph kind of turns like it's gonna touch again, but then it doesn't make it. Okay, so this is an actual x-intercept, this is an imaginary. Okay, and so what it'll look like in the graph is that it just will never make it back to the x-axis. Maybe it turns and gets close, but then it's not gonna. Okay? All right, let's do maybe just one more. Let's do number 9. Number 9, go ahead and start off your grouping for me, please. What can I take out of the first group? Okay, x squared. What's that gonna leave me with? X minus 4 is correct. Out of the second group, what can we take out? A 4, very good. What's that gonna leave me with? Make it a minus. Okay, now what's it gonna leave me with? X minus 4. Okay, these have to match, do they? Yes, so x minus 4 is my first factor. And x squared plus 4 is what I pulled out of the outsides. Okay, from there, can I split this one more time with the plus in the middle? No, then I'm ready to find my solution. If I let x minus 4 be the equal to 0, what would the answer come out to be? Positive 4. And if I were to set this equal to 0, if you remember from last example, we all know what's going to happen. What's step 1? What do I do with the plus 4 to get it across to the other side? Try to subtract it, right? So then I have x squared equals -4. But then what's my next step to solve that? I have to take the square root, and can I square root a negative? That means that your other ones are imaginary. And in your graph, what that looks like is that your graph never makes it back to the x-axis. Okay? So let's set up your little grid here. Where am I going to have a real root that it really does touch at? What number? 4. Is it a pass or a bounce? Okay, it's a pass because it's a single. And then for the other one, it's imaginary. We're starting low and ending high. This time, let's do the imaginary root first. So start low. Go towards the x-axis, but don't get there. And then turn away too fast. And then where are you going to pass through at? 4. Okay, so in that case, this would be your imaginary root. Okay, because it kind of heads that way, but then it doesn't actually make it. That's what an imaginary root will look like in your graph. Questions on that? Okay, we have one last thing to do, but it's very easy. So turn to your last page, please. Okay, if I tell you the features, you should be able to write the equation. Okay, so turn and look at number 1. If I tell you that your graph has a root at -2, what would that mean the parentheses would have had to say? So if -2 is the answer, it would have had to be an x plus 2, that's right, so put y equals. Okay, x plus 2. Now, the next term they list is a 0. Where does the x need to go if 0 is your answer? On the outside, so sneak an x there in the front. Okay, remember, whenever x is on the outside, that means 0 is the solution that goes with that. Okay, then the next root that I want is a 3. So what would the parentheses have had to say? X minus 3. And then I want a double root at -5. So what would the parentheses have had to say? X plus 5, but how many times would it be listed? Double, which means I can either write it again or I can just put a little square. Okay, to show that that one is a double. Does that make sense? Okay. Take a look at the next one. Number 2, y equals. This time I want double roots at 0 and -4. If 0 is the root, where does x go? On the outside. And if -4 is the other one, what should the parentheses say? X plus 4. So this one gives me the 0. This one gives me the -4. How do I make them both double roots? Little squares on both, right? So this one's a squared, this one's a squared. Okay, then for your singular roots, I'm going to just show you how to do this, but it's pretty easy. If I wanted my answer to be a third, I'm going to make the factor 3x minus 1. Okay, now think about why that makes sense. Write it down and then let me explain. If I was solving this, how would I get rid of the -1? I would bring it across as a +1, right? And then what would I have to do with the 3? Divide it. That's why it's 1/3. So if they give you a fraction, you're still going to take the opposite. So like if it's a 1, you're going to make it a -1. But then if there's an extra thing you have to divide by, just put it on the x. So now you do the next one. I want -5/2. Then the -5 is going to turn to a what? X plus 5. And then to get the divide by 2, where am I going to put it? On the x. And if you think about it backwards, it should make sense that your +5 would switch over to a -5, and then you'd end up dividing by 2 to get that. All right, so now do the last one. Okay, look at mine. There are 2 mistakes. What are they? I want a double root of 2. Did I do it correctly? Is the parentheses correct?
Yes.
What am I missing now? It ought to be squared to make it a double. Okay, then for my second term, I want 7/2 to be the answer. So my 7 turned to a -7. Did I put the 2 in the right spot? Okay, then it has to be the last one. What's wrong with it? If I want a -2, what do I need to use in the parentheses? +2. Does that make sense? Okay. So go ahead and pull out your adult math. Okay, you have all the rest of class to finish. We're going to do a couple examples together like we always do to make sure you understand how to do it. And then y'all will have till lunch and then after lunch. So about 15 minutes.
Is there plugging in?
You can plug into my card. Actually, hold on. I put an extension cord in please. Is that Uh-huh. Can y'all see today's Delta Math already? Okay.
That's fine.
And then are y'all both in it or no? You are, you're not? Okay, I'll watch the examples and then I'll walk you through it. Okay, we're just gonna do like the first two to make sure you kind of have the right idea. So will you click on the first question? It should say this. Okay, you see it? Okay. Where does the graph touch the x-axis? What number? Mine is a 6. Are you on the right question? You see 5? That's 6, yeah. Okay, now if it crosses at -6, what should the parentheses say? +6, which means that I could pick this one has an x +6 or this one. I don't want the top two. Okay, the other x-intercept, does it make it? Then it's imaginary. And if it's imaginary, do I want x squared with a positive or x squared with a negative? Okay, if it's a negative, remember, it's the reverse of what you think. If I let that equal 0, then how would I get the -1 across? Add it and then square root. Is that allowed?
Yeah.
Yes. What if it's this? +1, how do I get the +1 across? Minus it and then square root it. Is that allowed? This is the one that gives you an imaginary. And if you look at your notes, remember that both of the examples where it came out imaginary, let me just show you again. Okay, both of the examples where it was imaginary ended up being x squared with a plus. You see the x squared +9 came out imaginary, and then the x squared with the +4 came out imaginary. So if your other root is imaginary, it has to be x squared with a positive, okay? All right, so you're picking D there. We'll do one more question together and then you'll have some time to work. Okay, so D there. Second graph, where does it touch the x-axis at? Okay, -6 and 3 and +6. So let's start with the 3. If it crosses at +3, what kind of factor do I want down here? A -3. So that means it could be this one or this one. Okay, out of those two, when I split this second factor, can I split if it's a minus in the middle? Yes, because it was a plus, it'd be imaginary, right? Okay, when I split this, what would x squared minus 36 split into? Plus and minus 6. What would x squared minus 25 split into? Plus and minus 5. So do I want my other factors to be plus and minus 5 or plus and minus 6? Then I'm choosing that one. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Go through your assignment. Okay, get it done. We will do one of the factoring together just to make sure you remember how to do it, but we'll do it after lunch. So I would say a good goal for you right now, looking at your list, is I would try to get through all the select equations. And then when you get here to factoring trinomials, we'll do an example of that right after lunch. Okay? Yes. Use the password reset then.
No, it's like, I just like, now that it's like now let me log in with Google.
You can also just type in your email. And then if your password's wrong, that's where it'll say if you want to reset it. Yes, take the bathroom pass. Okay, so go to that's.com. Just open a new browser. Oh wait.
Yeah.
Okay, so then yours is
Early, you were just telling us a bit about, like about him. He was like asking me stuff. Remember how he was like, you apparently work on that stuff.
don't know what's.
I wanna be mad about that.
Yeah, I mean, like
This
those
is
are,
old teeth.
yeah, that's, like if that was like, I mean, I wanna say Coach Bell, but those was like,
That sounds like we were playing Coach, like, or like Coach Rush.
yeah, Coach Rush, it was like Coach Rush, we all did the same stuff, you know?
It's like we're all doing this, so Coach off about it.
Yeah, that's I know. I'm going to.
Did you come from Iran?
How did you just add a second class?
Oh, I
Do you remember?
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, okay. Okay, let me get your, you're gonna send it to that box. Thank you. So your class code. Make sure you do fourth period. It's gonna be this. Have you reset it? Yeah, the multiple choice, you only get one try, but I'll reset it if you get one wrong. Just tell me. Do you need a reset, Lyric? Okay. Uh-huh, sure. Did I tell you all the wrong answer? Or you just clicked through it? It'll just reset that one question. Okay, I'm resetting. Okay, Melanie, you're reset, and then Lyric. Lyric, you're reset. Mia, did you need me to reset you? Yeah. Oh, okay, and then reset you. Remind me your last name. Yes. Will you actually wait until
Yeah.
the other Hudson gets back? I think he was just getting water. You said flat. Sophia. Oh, so you're actually in a section where you just have to get 2 right. It'll give you a new one, but it won't penalize you. You could get 10 wrong in a row and it won't hurt you. Anybody else need a reset? Michelle? Okay.
Or do you mind doing this football?
No,
Sorry,
no
we had
problem.
no-
You do mine as well.
Yeah. No problem. Okay, Michelle, you're reset. And then Melanie, you said you need another reset.
I always just wait for like the last day.
I'm doing them like every 3 weeks, but I hate having to do that.
It's not even hard, I just like, I just don't want to.
Okay, Melanie, you're reset. Jamora, you need help? So then it has to be.
Worse.
Yeah, back. Wait, so is it going off of like, based off like the Virginia, but it isn't south? Stuff like this. Positive one?
Just the.
No, it's the model.
So the 4 goes with the X minus 1, and then the X squared plus is. the other. Make sense?
Is that one, right? Or not?
Yeah, it's all.
Okay, that's fine.
Both of them are pretty hard.
I can say
So, can I?
And see what that.
Yes, me. There's that, I have that three. And are you okay?
Yes. Minus 3.
Okay, so you have a -8, so you need a +8. For the other term, if you set that equal to 0, and you add the 6 across, take the square root, you add the 6 across, and then the square root of 6 would be a little bigger than the square root of 2, right? Here 2, and then you got across is a +3 and that's -3.
You didn't even put her in the
Just because the 4 and 3 that you found.
And then we'll do it
Place-
again. You need help with that. Yes, sir.
For homework number 6, I don't know if it's what it says below, essentially.
It's probably because it was after the due date, so
Oh.
I'm gonna actually give an extra date for that one since I wasn't here.
Yeah,
But normally, if that happens, email me, say, hey, I finished homework 6, we changed my grade. Because this system automatically penalizes late
Yeah.
really bad.
also, could you please, reset it for me?
Uh-huh.
The question?
Sure.
And for the number 7 too.
Okay,
I saw.
so on today's homework and last time's,
No, not today. Last time and,
and the
The
time
one
before
between
that,
us.
okay, got it.
thank you.
Uh-huh. Who had to go to the bathroom? Was it you that had to go?
Yeah.
Oh. Who was it in the hallway, Hudson, that was snitching on you?
Oh, that was Fernando. What? No, no, they were transferred. I put them in, they were super sad. But the noise canceling wasn't that bad. These are bad, like, I only do it.
Okay, Melanie, you're reset, and then Amir.
You almost woke up, but. And then, I should have done one of those things, bro, like, where, like, those things where you switch your real fast, it's like, things that people are. But they're like a weird thing, like, seeing.
Amir, yours are both reset too, just hit refresh.
It'd be excellent. So how people would talk to, right? Because these both have it. Okay, out of the other two, x squared minus 4 and x squared plus 4, which one's going to be the math? And see if I did the cross again, that's how you know the other two are imaginary, because you can't see the graph. Yes. Or no? So where's it cross? Right there at 4. So then you know you have to have x minus 4. So it's gotta be 1 and it's gotta be 2. Okay, the second part of the x squared either x squared minus 4 or x squared plus 4. Which of those is gonna deal with the math? So if it's a negative, it's splittable. Remember, if it's square root splits, we go to x plus 1 and minus 2. But it doesn't cross again.
Do you know the bond?
So if it's imaginary, you need it to cross again, it has to be x squared. Yeah. You just want to know when you just look at the side. But just say-
It's actually.
I did, okay. You can just tell me.
Dollar set on it.
Mhm.
150.
Yes.
Well, what does that even?
So there's a-
Last year.
Oh, yeah.
Me, you.
Oh,
and
no,
Travis, like, I was talking to her and then it was like, yeah, he was like, I mean, we're like, it's against the whole, we got I was like, better average, you don't know what you're doing, yes, I don't. Or is it crossing in line? He did not know, he called like three.
And one more, comma.
See, I don't know. Yeah.
So you're just looking at the graph and then finding numbers. And they should all be whole numbers in that section.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So I get these two, but I don't like. What's two?
Okay, so for the -2, we know it's an x plus 2. Should it be a single or a double? Okay, then that's- Okay, now let's look at this one. Now. It's a -5. So this that would be that makes sense. So your +2 needs to be squared to make it balance. Yes, but your +5 needs to be a pass-through, so it has a symbol.
All right, Annie, you should be good to go. Just hit refresh.
Y'all have lunch in about 3 minutes. Minus, because remember, with the x squared minus one, remember you can split it. So the x squared will go to x and x, and then the square root of 1 will go to a +1 and minus. This one is going to go far. Okay, so what's the square root of 4? Plus and minus 2. So does it touch at plus and minus 2? Okay, what's the square?
Okay,
root?
so this, when we were all waiting for cooking, you done, like taking it for everyone, based on the workout.
And then, so you know it's either this one or this one. There's the other place it crosses. -3 will be the plus. Good job.
John was liking this. I'm surprised there's no fight.
That's the last one.
Like those Saturday, or like before the game started.
Oh, shit, there's the coaches.
It was Coach Wall or Coach Walker.
Dude, bad, bro. And then Coach Beer, like, I'm trying to. Look at where he said that.
Did you hear what he said? Coach Beer said to me.
Yeah, it was.
Hudson P, do you also have a grade check?
Oh, yeah.
No, dude, and, no, I think it's because, but.
Y'all have lunch in 1 minute. Thank you.
They were just like, nowadays gotta go like 5 minutes, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think one of us went to schools and we got in a fight and we just fighting each other. We can go out. I got it.
Remember last year when I got to the fun.
That's not, no, I'm killing the sun. No, I think, I mean,
So last year, remember when Matthew started that fight last year?
You thought it what?
Remember when Matthew started that one fight last year? I got it. No, I was on the room.
Look to me, does this start 9?
Yes, sure. I'll reset it, and it'll be ready when you get back. What's up?
When is the next test?
We're actually gonna talk about it after lunch, but it's Friday. So we'll review Wednesday and then you'll test Friday. But we'll have next class, it won't be like a bunch of new stuff. We'll go back through everything that's on the test. You'll get a paper review just like last time.
Yeah, because I was absent during the factoring day, so I have to review that.
Yes, and then do you want me to send you the notes for that day?
Yes.
Okay, and then let me give you the paper too. Got to record that day.
Oh, it's
I
fine.
just remembered, but I can send you a different YouTube video.
Yeah.
It's still me teaching it, it's just not the exact same examples. But I can also give you the filled out copy of this. After lunch, we're gonna do one of these together, and if you want me and you to do another one, we can do that.
It's just enough. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, just let me know though if you need help.
I'll take a picture of this and I will bring it up.
That's fine. Uh-huh. Okay.